we've got a number of folks.
Okay.
No one from the opposing side.
Well, there was nothing secret in the news,
Here, good deal. So it's 10 minutes to 11. We'll come back from our short break at this time, come back into our regular work session. Mr. Bailey, before we start on the security camera discussion, are you going to have any other updates for open session that you want to provide us today?
No, everything's been pretty quiet, so we're okay. I've kept you guys informed by email of anything that's been popping up, and there's nothing new, so.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with the discussion on the county's security camera policy draft update. And I don't know who wants to kick it off.
Well, it probably should be me, being
Okay.
this draft was put together by me with my words were put in this draft. I didn't do the actual typing, but my words were put in this. After our last meeting, we talked about the security camera policy. Commissioner Kestner had sent out an email prior to that if anybody had any thoughts or changes to the policy to bring them forward. We as the Board of Commissioners had a discussion, added it to the agenda for the next day as an add-on, had the draft put together. Under Sheriff Howell had not had a chance to look at it at that time. We decided to hold off making the decision on that draft policy change. At this point, I don't, Under Sheriff Howell has not responded to me. I don't know if he responded to Denise or to either one of you two. But that's the way it got to here. That's the way that it came forward. And so this is my shot at amending the policy, the county commissioner's policy, to fit what I believe has become the need today. I know legal counsel has reviewed it. I'd let Jim speak for himself on that. I know that Jay has done some work on it. I don't know how much time you or Commissioner Kessler put into it, but this is what I'm bringing forward as a policy change.
I've read it, so.
I'll add a little bit related to the email that I sent out. I try to make it very polite, easy. We have had a policy in place since 2012. Basically, anybody needed to view the camera, they would go to the department head or the commissioners, whatever, and they take it to the jail, to Lieutenant Hopper, say, please allow this viewing of this point. It was intended originally, if a person needed to view a time frame or of an incident, they just go through the department head, they approve it, they take it to Howell under sheriff, and he would let the person view that system. It wasn't really set up for continuous viewing, like 24/7 on your computer. It was for a time frame that was needed. We had an incident of some individuals going outside of that policy, not abiding by it, to get viewing set up on their own laptop. But if we want to change it, and that's what the change is to permit people continuous viewing a segment of the courthouse. There was an incident of somebody viewing the jail which got nipped because that's a big liability on civil rights. So we need to ensure that whatever we do it with respect to our citizens, civil rights, and our jail facility, civil rights, and so forth. As far as the previous policy, it permits people viewing, so I don't see really a need to change. But there's some pros and cons of having continuous viewing of various parts of the courthouse. And we kind of left the security aspect back in 2012 in the hands of the Sheriff Department. So I'd like to have comments on the pros and cons of having camera viewing across the courthouse.
Mr. Bailey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I would much have preferred Under Sheriff Hall here to address this issue. He's been dealing with it for quite some time. He's on his way back from a doctor's appointment in Portland, and so I will be addressing this issue here. Under Sheriff Hall's perspective is that nobody should have viewing privileges other than the sheriff's office for purposes of security. I can't say that I necessarily agree with that. I do understand both perspectives of the employee's need or desire to view and the sheriff's office responsibility to provide security to the courthouse, the employees, and all people that come to the courthouse. With the amended version of the security camera, I think it takes the policy from being a security policy to either an employee or well, actually, it just brings it to an employee monitoring and viewing policy. If you provide one employee with the opportunity to view the cameras, how can we not provide every employee with that same privilege or opportunity to view the cameras? My problem with that is I have a dissenting perspective of this, and mine is strictly on the perspective of providing security to the courthouse, the employees, and the persons that come into the courthouse. If we provide all employees with the opportunity to view the cameras, all aspects of the courthouse are viewed. I have a couple examples here that I would I'll give to you as to my dissenting perspective. And maybe you might be able to understand my perspective a little bit more than just being a broad perspective. You have citizens' privacies, the confidentiality of citizens and confidential informants that we have coming into the sheriff's office will no longer be confidential. These people will be viewed by some employees. Their identities will be known. They'll be rumored out within the county. Confidential informants will no longer feel comfortable coming into the sheriff's office providing information on crimes that they do now. And in the reality of things that I have experienced, confidential informants who become known or suspected of being informants become dead informants. Court appearances, citizens appearing in court for sensitive issues such as divorces, child custodies, will no longer be private. Their names will be rumored out and outside of the courthouse, and unnecessary embarrassment and humiliation will be focused towards them. We have high-risk prisoner transports. The viewing of prisoners being taken out of the jail and transported. All it takes is a phone call to an individual that's a friend of the prisoner or a family member of the prisoner. The times that they're being transported are going to be known. It causes an unnecessary and undue risk to the transporting deputies and puts them at risk. We have hostage situations. In the event that there is a hostage situation in the courthouse and an employee is taken hostage, the camera system soon becomes a tactical advantage for the hostage taker, and it puts deputies at risk, and tactical advantage goes to the hostage taker. Active shooter situations. We have employees in the courthouse that carry firearms. In the event there's an active shooter, the sheriff's office responsibility is to eliminate the active shooter. In the event that an employee has a firearm and gets confronted by law enforcement, the likelihood of that employee being shot is very high. And just to look at human nature. In the event that there's a disruption, it's being viewed by employees. What's the human nature of employees? It's to go to the situation and see what's going on. The likelihood of a stray bullet in a shooting situation is likely to hit a curious spectator. My belief on the amendment to this policy does two things. It denigrates the security of the courthouse and prevents the sheriff's office of providing optimal security and endangers the safety and welfare of all employees and persons coming into the courthouse. If we want to amend and adopt this policy that Commissioner Winters has written, I would say, let's simply make it an employee viewing usage and camera policy, because it's not a security policy. It denigrates the security of the courthouse. It doesn't let the sheriff's office provide optimal security that we are supposed to provide. Judge Nichols has already conveyed to me that he will not allow any viewing of the third floor. And why would he do that? If security is at risk, if this provides better security, why wouldn't Judge Nichols allow all employees to view the third floor? Because of what I have conveyed, it denigrates the security of the courthouse. My recommendation is this: I think that we have gone into this thing without thinking about the totality of the circumstances involved in this. My recommendation simply is to put a security committee together. Let's look at all the options. Let's make a good, comprehensive policy that benefits everybody. The sheriff's office, the security of the courthouse, and the employees here of the courthouse. Are there variables that we could put together to make things better for the employees to view? I think so. I think that there should be some viewing. I don't have any objection to that. My only objection is what is being viewed. If I had a recommendation, I would say the hallway that goes down to the sheriff's office should be blacked out. The third floor should be blacked out. And the parking lot that comes into the courthouse should be blacked out. We have to provide some.
When you say blacked out to just anybody viewing.
Absolutely.
The sheriff department would still be viewing.
Yes, sir.
You want to say those again, Sheriff?
The hallway that goes from the lobby, the main lobby, to the sheriff's office and probation and parole.
That would be basically the east wing.
The east wing, that should be viewed by sheriff's employees only.
Adult probation that deals with 180 felons.
No, I have no objection to that. I consider them law enforcement.
So what were the other two that you mentioned?
The other ones were the third floor, the entire third floor should, in my opinion, should be blacked out, and that includes the jail.
Yeah, the third floor includes the jail, the circuit court office, and the district attorney's office. Those are primary inhabitants there.
And what was the other one?
And then the parking lot, they would be the outside the sheriff's office, the security part that comes into the sheriff's office.
So the
The
east floor,
Sally Port is what you're talking, what I call Sally Port.
Where they deliver the meals and such.
yes, and also to transport prisoners.
Yes.
When we talk parking lot, we think of this one over here, Sheriff.
Okay.
You're thinking of the, at least I believe you're talking about what I call the Sally Port.
Where you guys park?
It'd be the east.
Yeah,
East
side.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah. Other than that, like I say, I think we can come up, if we put some kind of committee together, we can come up with a comprehensive policy that benefits everybody. Otherwise, I think that if we just have everybody viewing cameras, I think it becomes a problem. And my biggest concern is this, is if it's a security camera policy, things go wrong, the finger's going to be pointed directly at me. And the comments are going to be made, well, the sheriff's office is responsible for security. Well, you don't have the manager of the produce department tell the meat department how to cut the beef. And my point is that the sheriff's office should have, if we're going to provide security for this building, if that's our sole responsibility, we should have some say in it. And so that's why I say, not only should we have say in it, that everybody involved should have say too. That's why I'm recommending put a committee together. Let's throw some ideas out there. What's in the best interest of the courthouse and the employees of the courthouse? let's come up with a comprehensive plan and let's put it together. So my recommendation is let's hold off on adopting this policy. Let's keep things status quo as they are right now, and let's put a comprehensive policy together.
Well, in my views, the original committee, which in my view still exists, is Denise, Dave, and Paul. The last time we talked about the security cameras, I believe, I'd have to go back to the minutes or whatever, tasked that group, go ahead and have another meeting, and for them to start, during budget time, look at starting a reserve, because if we're into this, I don't know how many years now, we have no reserve for replacing cameras, for the system getting antiquated and everything. So in my mind, whenever we left that Board of Commissioners meeting, there was direction given to security committee. I'm not opposed to that same group because they were involved at the very beginning of when those cameras were put in. They put some time into this. They can go back together. I would also suggest to the Board of Commissioners, if we delay this and have that committee pull back together, I would like to add our HR person, Jay, to that as a person to, because this is a policy, a county commissioner's policy, bring that forward and for them to take anything before our legal counsel for review before it comes back to the Board of Commissioners. Myself, I'm still comfortable with what was put in here. The sheriff brings some things forward that he has concerns on, out of respect. I want to listen to the sheriff. The policy that's brought forward does talk about sensitive cameras, which what you're bringing straight forward right now is that there's sensitive cameras that you don't believe should be viewed by the public for the safety of all of our employees and for your operation. But
Well, and other than by name, I think that's the key part. You brought forward, Sheriff, by name what those sensitive cameras are. The policy just says sensitive cameras or viewing of non-sensitive. So I think that would be a good addition to the policy as we amend it, what those sensitive cameras are, so it's clear.
Well,
there's not people's
well,
opinion.
and agreed. Judge Nichols came and talked to me, and
Yes, he
I
did.
said, what I would need from you, Judge, is what cameras you believe are sensitive that people should be able to view.
Yeah.
But we have to figure every department sort of made up different. We have to bring our department heads and give them some buy-in on this also. So if we pull this committee together, department heads need a chance to at least email in or bring things forward. Because every department, I've pointed out, the adult probation, what's a sensitive camera for somebody else to not view, may not be sensitive for them to view. So
Some departments, like probation or the DA, needs their own view of their office and entrance too, but not the full hallway or things of that nature.
well, I may disagree with you on that. In the wake of the shooting in Vegas here this last week, and there is active shooter, things can happen, and
And that's why the sheriff department is constantly monitoring the hallways from their.
and if they're not here, we don't have that coverage.
It's monitored in the jail department, and they always hear 24/7.
Well,
And that's why I bring up the active shooter and the hostage situation. We might look at Lake County and say, well, when is Lake County going to have a hostage situation? When is Lake County going to have an active shooter? Is it likely? No, maybe not. Is it probable? Absolutely. With the demographics that we are looking at these days, mental health issues are increasing substantially. I'm sure Las Vegas would have said, when in the heck are we going to have an active shooter up there on the 32nd floor of the Mandarin motel? They would have probably never thought in a million years that would happen. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen here in Lake County. It's simply a matter of when it's going to happen. We are going to have one. and we need to be prepared for it. It might not be 50 years from now, but at some point, Lake County is going to experience an active shooter or a hostage situation, and most likely it's going to be in a school or you're in the courthouse.
Well, what I'll say, it will be very brief, because I came today prepared to listen, and I'm going to continue to listen because there's others that are going to speak here. Because quite frankly, some of the things that we've already talked about, I tend to disagree with, so I don't want to impose my beliefs right now on this whole situation, but I want to see if Sheriff, if you got anything else you want to add. If not, I think we have some other departments that want to.
I've got one more thing.
Yes.
Judge Nichols has got a security committee that he's mandated by statute to bring forward. That involves the judge, the DA, the sheriff liaison commissioner, the court administrator, and the circuit court administrator. I would suggest or recommend that whatever committee we put together here for the courthouse, we work cooperatively with this group as one big group to come up with a policy.
Otherwise, you have conflicting potential.
Well, I think, great suggestion, I think, and the judge is definitely in charge of his area. That's space that is supplied for the state judge and that. The rest of the courthouse is a little bit different than his. I think this committee needs to reflect and get some views from there. But his committee is based on their secured area up there, along with looking our side of it. The judge did, and if I'm not mistaken, they did put some dollars towards some cameras for that area up there. But yeah, I think we need to cross over and make sure that his committee, what their views are reflected in the one that we put together.
And there'll be some crossover such as access to the third floor with municipal.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have.
Okay. So we have other departments here today.
I also had some public comment.
And if you don't mind, Orlando, I'm gonna let our department heads speak first.
Okay.
Okay.
I spoke up at the last commissioners meeting and just requested the cameras that I have access to.
And
Which is-
I'm holding that until I'll be getting back to you on that.
Okay. So that's, that's all I really have to say. I don't.
Yeah, as part of you are part of the law enforcement, and you do entertain your customers, that I would agree that you would have it within your confines. And the same with the DA, which that's all third floor up there, but sheriff's department down at one end, probation at one end. But the real question now would be the rest of the courthouse. And very good point, Sheriff. If the rest of the courthouse to have viewing capabilities for whatever personal reason, it kind of diminishes the security aspect.
Are you making a milkshake, Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, I got a little hungry, so I decided to turn on the machine.
Okay.
I thought maybe you was going.
Actually, it's a daiquiri machine.
I was going to say you're prepping for your lunch.
Okay, other folks from our departments want to step up. Jay?
Just from a risk management and human resources perspective, there are lots of times where we want to allow employees to view these cameras. If somebody, and we've had this in the past, expresses a concern about their safety in the building for whatever reason, it wouldn't make sense for us to deny that request. I see no problem with having this be a system of convenience. We spent a lot of money on this camera system, and if it can help the different departments know who's in their lobby, be able to just keep track of things, I think it's a benefit. Coincidentally, I was at a risk management
Jay,
conference.
before you go on, could you
Yeah.
come on up? Mr. Bailey needs to be able to hear you too.
I was at a risk management conference last week, and one of the keynote speakers was Regan Rachevsky, I think is how you pronounce it. He's the president of Prima in Texas. He's the director of Enterprise Risk Management Safety, a large institution there in Texas. He travels all over the country talking about these active shooter situations, the violence in the workplace, and the employer's responsibility in these situations to provide security and safety for our employees. So I thought, perfect opportunity, we're talking about this subject at the county, so I asked him, we have a camera system that we've installed, and we have, we are talking about maybe allowing everybody to have access to it, but certainly people who have expressed a concern about their safety. And he said, absolutely, my recommendation would be to allow everyone to have it. It will be a benefit in those situations where you have a hostage or an active shooter. And he's actually dealt with several of these situations and the aftermath. Our advice from our attorneys on these situations where we have an employee who expresses a concern about a domestic partner, someone they have a stalking order against, or any number of situations where they have a concern about their safety in this building, is for us to allow them to use our camera system. I think every department has different, I like the idea of getting department head input, because every department has a different need. And in my mind, good legitimate reasons for wanting access to the system. Anyway, that's my input.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Anyone else before we call on Orlando? Orlando?
Okay. Appreciate you allowing me to say some things. I went through this document for the first time. I'm very glad you have an attorney here, because that was the first thing I was going to tell you, is you need an attorney to look at this, because there's some real concerns from my perspective.
Just state your name for the
Okay.
audience.
Orlando Gonzalez, Lakeview, Oregon. Okay, you folks know I've been involved, made comments in the past about the security system. Okay. And I have quite a few comments, but I want to make a comment in regards to Sheriff Taylor's, to show you what does happen. Someone says, no, it doesn't happen, it'll never happen. Yes, it does happen. When that system was put in, we were told that it was for security and safety. And that system was going to be run by the Sheriff's Department. And the people that were here said, hey, that's great, and we agreed to that. Sheriff's Department, law enforcement, that's great. They're going to do it, they're going to run it, they'll take recommendations from individuals, but that's their system. And that's what we, as citizens, agreed to. That's law enforcement's system. Not anyone else's system, their system. They should be the person to make the decision. Now, what happens, he says, and I agree with him, what happens? Nothing. Hey, we're not going to look at other people. Yes, you are. Other people are going to look at it. Number one, I had someone serve papers to an individual in this courthouse for a lawsuit. I'm required to do that. I can't personally give that to the individual. I meet that person the next day and I say, did you get those things? Or a couple hours a week that week. You know what he tells me? Hey, Rolando, I can't serve any more papers for you. I said, why not? Because the people stop me in the cafes and stuff, and they laugh at me. Oh, we saw you on the camera. Yeah, you're serving subpoenas for Orlando. I said, what? He said, I'm not going to serve it. You know, if I get to be put on a camera and viewed by everyone, and I'm serving subpoenas down at the courthouse, I'm not going to do it for you anymore. That's a private thing. Okay. About 2 or 3 years ago, I went up and talked to then attorney Euless Stapleton. He says, guess what, Rolando? And I said, guess what? He says, I just had an investigator from the Department of Justice, Oregon Department of Justice up here. Yeah. And they want to know what you're doing in my office. They received a complaint. Chuck Moore filed a complaint that he felt that I was visiting Beulah Stapleton too much. Now, how did you know that? The cameras guys, he's watching the cameras. Just like the sheriff said, someone else is watching the cameras. Who's going into the courthouse? Who's going into jail? Who's going into the sheriff's office? Who's going into probation? Who's going to pay their taxes? Who goes in there and talks to Stacy about candidates, etc. Okay. And then James Ross, and not only I, James Ross and I, we feel in our heart that we were monitored. Every time we came into this courthouse, we were monitored. People found that out. And you want to check with James Ross, give James Ross a call. We'd wave. James Ross made a habit of every time we went to see you as the district attorney, he'd wave at the camera. Hi, he'd say, I'm here today. Which tells you folks that if you allow other people besides law enforcement to look at those cameras, what you're saying is we're going to let other people look into the private business of other people that are coming into this courthouse.
Well,
Why should, no, listen to me, please.
Okay.
Listen to me. Who goes into the, I was being, I'm assuming there was a person in law enforcement, and it's not, and that was in Taylor, I wasn't when Taylor was here, that was monitoring my moves in this courthouse when I would come in here.
You answered
And
my
you know, I
question.
can, if you ask a person, put them up, that's my assessment, especially based on the Department of Justice investigation. I have a right to come into this courthouse and go wherever I want to if I'm not a person of ill character. That's, you know, you're taking the privacy away from people. That is not, and the other thing is, that this letter, you know, if I look at this, just I didn't have much time. This letter was signed originally,
That was the original policy.
yeah, original order, whatever, September 25th, 2012. This was signed before Sheriff Taylor got here. If you'd have had a chance to say, hey, well, you know, I'm the county sheriff now. Yeah, maybe he wants to make some changes here. You know, I think that if I remember correctly, the reason Denise and Jim or Mr. Herman were involved was to get input from the other people on who felt they needed a camera. Not, hey, do you need a camera? It was, hey, do we need a camera in tax collection? Or, heck, we don't need a camera here. As a matter of fact, there was people that said, and this is what I heard, there was people in the tax collector's office, because the cameras, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, the cameras was aimed right at the desk, at the office. The employees were visible. Are you going to have someone on that camera that views the other employees' work? One person, I was told that the person in tax assessor's office, the main honcho, said, you can put a camera on the desks where people pay their taxes, but you cannot put a camera to view my employees. That's violating their privacy. If they want to poke their nose, that's no one else in this office has a right to view that. You know, that's private. That's when you have a camera in your, do you have cameras in your offices? These other people do. Okay, the other thing, one thing when looking at this revision, there's a lot of names in here that are new that weren't in the original one. And, you know, I've worked with contracts and other things my whole career. And some of these things need to be defined. Like, you know, I'm as a citizen, you know, like in the first number one, there's a lot of changes. Number two, it says there's changes, but number one doesn't say there's changes. It does, they're not highlighted to show what the changes are. And it refers to a commissioner liaison in the new letter. In the old letter, it says department liaison. Okay, when I came on board with this, and listen to me, Brad, you were the liaison. And you were very strong about where those damn cameras could or could not be. You said, hey, I'm the boss, those cameras go here, 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 and that's it. I'm the boss, and that's where they're gonna go. Now here it says, who's the commissioner, I need a definition of the commissioner liaison, and the department liaison. The department liaison I see right at this moment is Commissioner Kestner. And that's the only person that I think should be speaking to the sheriff and any other committee that's working there. Because he has that responsibility. You know, you can't have all the commissioners. You know, we've had other folks here in the office that, hey, you know, I can't work with 3 commissioners. I need someone, a liaison or someone to give us some direction. That has to be defined. Who is it? Have you changed that? Commissioner liaison. In there it says again, safety and security. Oh, I was gonna mention, someone told me, you know, there was a shootout down there at the AAA Cafe maybe 10 years ago. There was a shootout here in town. We've had them. There was a shootout over at the bar, or what is now what is that? The bank over there. We've had them, not right in here, but we've had them in town. The other guy, I think the guy over at AAA, I think he committed suicide. So he wouldn't be arrested. So, you know, we've had them, people will do that.
You want the actual date on that, Orlando?
No, I mean, whatever, it doesn't matter, it means it happened.
Yeah.
It happened. It can
25
happen.
years.
Just like the sheriff said, it can happen.
25 years ago.
25 years ago.
Yeah,
That's yesterday.
yeah.
That's yesterday. I'm 40. You bring a 25-year-old person to me here, that's a young kid. And number 2, camera viewing. Okay. It says, any staff with department head approval or department head shall be allowed to do viewing access of non-sensitive camera. It's, you know, it's non-sensitive, what's it say there? Cameras. And the direction shall be given to the IT coordinator for viewing installation. So we're telling the department head, human resource, and go over to the IT coordinator and tell them, hey, put a camera over here. No.
Now, Orlando,
Yeah.
I am going to interrupt you. We're not talking about more cameras. We're not talking about...
No, I'm saying,
Well,
hey.
no, what, listen.
That's what this says.
No, this is viewing of the existing cameras. And to the best of my knowledge, because you made a lot of general statements about things you've heard from who knows who.
But
I don't think we have one camera that views anybody's office work area except for those counters. And it views those counters where the public comes in to interact with our employees that comes in to do that. We're not talking about a policy that's putting in more cameras and viewing people's private areas. You're just making a bunch
No,
of
I'm
general
not saying, okay, you're
statements.
saying, okay, it's not more cameras, it's allowing them to view on their camera.
Exactly,
Okay,
the
so
existing
I'm sorry.
cameras.
I meant that, but anyway, I don't know who the IT coordinator is. What happened to the sheriff? The sheriff's been left out of this, out of the picture. All allowed viewing should be only for official county purposes. Official county purposes. I think if there's someone, this is just a concern here, someone mentioned domestic violence, other things, election agencies, whatever, there's a process for handling those. And in this courthouse, what I've seen is the sheriff's department assumes that responsibility. If Ken Kester says, hey, you know, I have collection person that's just bugging the heck out of me. Sheriff Tater, could you just talk to the person and tell him, he just needs to talk to me some other time. That's why we have law enforcement. Okay. Okay. Here, there's another thing here, it's kind of concerning to me. It says, when the undersheriff is not available, you may contact the facility manager with your request. The facility manager, this is, again, stated again, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of citizens in Clay County, this is a system that belongs to the county sheriff. It's under his responsibility. So the facility manager is not, number one, it's not his responsibility, and number two, you're putting him into a situation of jeopardy. But if something happens, and he says, I approved it. I approved it. Well, you're going to court because you approved it. If the sheriff approves it, he's given out, he already has authorization to do that. It's not, if I were the facilities manager, I'd say, no, I don't want that responsibility. There's a sheriff, we just wait till he gets back, or Havel gets back. And the biggest thing I think too is that if there's individuals in the courthouse that have a concern about working in the courthouse, they feel threatened because they're here in the courthouse, and that happens. I've had people, I work with the Forest Service, I've had people that said, hey, Orlando, I can't work there. Those people scare me over there. And I've said, okay, I'm sorry they scare you. To handle them when they come in the office. Okay, that's the way we're going to handle it. We don't handle it by saying, hey, I want to monitor if those people come in the office. It's not, it's like I said, it's a violation, I see it, a violation of individual rights of people in this county to have other employees. We know the sheriff's department's monitoring that. But to have other employees in this courthouse monitoring our comings and goings in this courthouse, that doesn't sound right to me, and it shouldn't sound right to you. And I can be harsh, We had an individual at the Women's Children's Crisis Center, and she was afraid. We hired her as the director. She was afraid. She said, Orlando, I want a panic button. Oh, I said, I don't know. I want to panic straight to the sheriff's office. And I said, oh, well, I don't know, we can do that. It's going to cost money or whatever. And then I want a background check on everyone that comes in the office. I said, well, how long it takes to get a background check? And person comes in there and says, my husband's beating me. Well, you got to go to the sheriff's office and get your fingerprints, and then we got to go to the FBI, and then maybe we'll talk to you. What I told that individual is, I'm very sorry you feel that way. I'm very sorry you feel threatened by the clients that are coming in here requesting help. But if you feel that way, and I wasn't trying to be mean, I said if you feel that way, you might want to consider employment somewhere else. Because there may be people that in your office or that come into the courthouse that you feel comfortable with. I felt uncomfortable with a guy who would come in, there's a sign on the door that says, you can't wear a pistol in here. You come in wearing a pistol anyway. And they said, hey, Orlando, we don't want to talk to that guy because he comes in with a pistol.
Orlando, I don't want to slow you down anymore.
But anyway.
We're getting way off of the
But
security
anyway,
camera
what I'm
policy.
saying is that, I don't,
I'm gonna say-
you folks agreed to a
I'm gonna-
system
I'm
when we
gonna,
first talked about it, and I thank you very much, and I
you
think we should
bet.
continue.
I'm gonna
that
make a
system.
statement, because you just said something that in
What's
this day
that?
and age would not fly.
What's that?
And in your past life, you ought to know the same.
What's that?
that you suggested to somebody they might ought to go find a job somewhere else. That is absolutely
If they feel
ludicrous.
threatened working in that
That,
atmosphere,
then we need to protect
you
them.
can't, no, you can't protect
We need to
everyone.
protect them. I
You
will
cannot
never
protect
suggest to
everyone.
one of our employees,
You can
if
never,
you
protect-
feel
you cannot
unsafe,
protect every
Orlando,
man,
we're done.
right? You can't protect everyone.
Well, again, I brought this topic up several weeks ago because there were individuals who did not follow the policy. We just need to ensure we follow the policy that's in place. There's been some recommendations to change the policy. There's a few little things there that I think the sheriff makes good points. We need a committee to look it over. I'm not, and thanks to Orlando, I'm not at all receptive to, if the sheriff, I'm the sheriff, not me go to the facility manager, because that puts you at harm's way. I mean, the sheriff is charged with security, and you're in charge of the facility. There's two different things there, two different ways of looking at things. But I'd like to take this thing, and I think Commissioner Winters made a comment earlier, put it back to the committee, adjourn it with the committee of the circuit court, make sure there's no conflicts, and then go forth from there. The original policy wasn't that constraining. The department head would agree to permit somebody to view and go to the sheriff department and request access. It's just whether we follow our own policy or not.
So, Mr. Bailey, you've listened to quite a bit here. Have you got anything today you want to say on this?
Yeah, I've got four things that I wanted to say. I was taking notes as we went along. The first is, I think the judge's committee on security and camera surveillance is a separate issue. I think that there's not really any true overlap there, so I think their area of responsibility and obligation is different from what our committee would be addressing. So I don't see that you would gain anything by combining the two, and you could end up confusing a few things. Second thing is, points brought up by the sheriff and by Mr. Gonzalez, I think there are several legitimate points in there, because what we're doing is we're balancing security with regard to what law enforcement has to provide and security that law enforcement needs in carrying out its duties, as well as private security interests. So there's certainly a balancing that's going to be going on there. And that goes to my third point. I think a lot of things that are raised by the sheriff, not all of them, and a lot of things that are raised by Mr. Gonzalez can be dealt with if anyone who has access, we have a policy that says you are not to disclose what you view to the general public. Now that doesn't address the sheriff's legitimate concerns about situations that are ongoing and seeing individuals come in and folks are being transported, stuff like that. But I think it does address issues like what Mr. Gonzalez raised, where folks are meeting or seeing individuals out in the general public and saying, oh, saw you in the courthouse, you must have been doing this or that. That's completely inappropriate. And so even if someone has a right, a legitimate interest for viewing cameras, I think we need a policy that says that, just like a lot of information that county employees encounter is confidential, that whatever you see on these cameras remains confidential. But I think we can address it with a policy matter. The last point is something really simple, and that is with regard to the facility manager issue here. If you look at what's stated there, these requests go to the undersheriff, but if the undersheriff is not available, you may contact the facility manager with your request. The facility manager is not called upon to do anything in terms of allowing a review or anything like that. The way I read it, both the undersheriff and the facility manager are simply a level below the sheriff, so the sheriff is not getting all of these requests. It would seem to me that if the undersheriff is not available, you've got a time-sensitive matter, You bring it to the facility manager, he's gonna process the request, and I assume the first thing he's gonna do is bring it to the sheriff and say, I got this request, under sheriff's not here, how do you want to handle it? So he could still be in the loop without it ending up landing on the sheriff's desk automatically. But that's not a major issue. That can be addressed one way or the other as we move through the policy.
Well, and Mr. Bailey, I'm glad, before you go on, I'm glad you brought that up, because under 3 was the request for review, and that's reviewing something in my mind that has happened already. This happened 24 hours ago. I don't know how I got the ding in my truck. Could you go back and look at the cameras that face this side of the courthouse and tell me what went on between these hours and these hours? So your point is well taken. It's not putting our facilities manager in any kind of predicament to get that request. He would
Right.
contact the appropriate person to go back and review the footage.
And that's where the language concerning facility managers need to be cleaned up. It can be read individually in different ways.
But go ahead, Mr. Bailey, with your last point.
Oh, the last point is this. It seems to me that there is a question as to whether or not everybody would just have open access to cameras, or that a lot of people who are not put through some sort of screening should have access to every single camera. Probably some thought should be given to, okay, what is appropriate in terms of this individual's responsibility, what assists the courthouse in security, and then you have another category of people who, because of the situations that are unique to this individual, they should have the right or the ability to review just for their own personal safety. So there's some overlap in these areas, but I think they're all issues that can be discussed in a committee, and I think we can eventually work it out, because you certainly will have liability issues, both in terms of compromise of law enforcement ability to do their job, as well as civil liability if someone has legitimate concern about their individual safety and we don't take steps to protect them. So those things overlap, and I think we can work them out.
Okay, well, I really like your point on the confidentiality part of the process for anybody that's viewing them, that what's being viewed should not be shared in the general public. That just almost goes without saying, but it sounds like we need a policy to make sure it goes without being done.
It's been a great discussion. As we work through this, I think that the committee will come to some agreements on different things. A lot of things have been brought forward. In this draft one of the things it talks about department heads, should be department head / elected officials. Make sure both of those are covered. You have to get some ownership into your department heads to know their department and who should be able to view those cameras or not, or if they allow it all, and for them to be able to manage those people's time. The policy for the use of what people see on that camera is probably one of the most important things that come across, especially with Orlando mentioning that in the past it has been abused and used against the public. So I think that is one of the things that definitely needs to be in there. Is this policy is strict. If you use this for personal gain, or you use this against somebody that comes in the courthouse, you will be reprimanded, basically. So that to me, misuse of the cameras or recording of the cameras and using that is important, Mr. Bailey. I appreciate that. One thing that nobody talked about today, we're a public building. We're public. Everybody comes in here, they go to Safeway, they go to True Value, they go to Walmart. They're all on camera then. What is the difference of us being a public building and that we're so much more secretive than these other places?
people have to realize they're on camera every place they go. There's cameras on the doggone stoplights that you drive through. It's become a camera world.
That's why I have duct tape on my license plate.
Yeah, well, that's your decision, but I believe that this has risen to a state of fear that people are going to misuse this. Why don't we turn it around and do exactly what we're talking about? Find out how we protect our employees, what's the right cameras to be able to be used, and if there was a monitor out here, then people walked in and they knew they were on a monitor, and they knew they were being watched, maybe they're not going to be the active shooter, or maybe they're not going to be the one that comes in and maybe threatens or there is harm to one of our employees. How can we look at this as a tool to be a positive thing? Everything today was sort of negative about that we're going to abuse this camera system and everything. I think we can look at this as how do we protect our public and our employees the best way. Commissioner Shannon, what you said is, I agree with you. I would never want to jeopardize the security of one of our employees that came to us and said, you know, I feel like that there's a chance of me being harmed here, and I need some protection. I think putting a committee together, I think back whenever we put the committee together, the three original ones, was very good. The security question about our facilities manager, who is the one here any hours of the night comes in, if there's a bomb threat or if there's anything else that needs to be able to look at a room or look at a hallway to be able to send his or her people down there to secure that area as far as it's locked, we're out of here, or something like that. If the sheriff isn't around, whether they need to work with the sheriff or they get access to a certain part of the building. I've always been comfortable with our facilities manager being a part of that for the protection of the operations of our building. So the committee can throw that out there and see if that's a necessity or whatever, but we're at a juncture now where this was brought forward. First draft, we beat it up today. I believe I'm very comfortable with bringing that committee together, and I recommend for Jay to be on that committee because he obviously worked with the insurance side of it, and then coordinate with department heads and do crossover on what the court security is. Not that we're going to be the same as the court security, we're a completely different system. I probably have other things there, but good conversation today, trying to get to where we need to be.
And I think we all agree on the safety of the citizens and of the employees. This surfaced because we just need to follow it. If we have a policy, we need to follow it as opposed to circumvent it. And that takes ownership of all individuals.
Okay, well, I think, as has been stated, we've had quite a discussion on this, and we're going to move on at this time. Mr. Bailey, did you have anything else you wanted to share? You probably have things you want to do.
Got lunch?
Well, I do have things to do, yes, but no, I don't have anything else. I thought this was a good discussion, a lot of good points were raised all over.
Okay, well, we'll let you go then, and we'll be talking to you later.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye. I think I don't know.
The green light's not on anymore.
Yeah, it's off, isn't it? So, department updates, any additional department updates? Dave, you're our lone one in the audience, and Denise?
I just have some, I got the 2018 Parks and Rec grant, I got it completed, turned in, and it's on the move.
Where you got the grant or the application?
The application's all put in, ready to go in November. I'll go in front of the committee and I'll give them my favorite presentation I love to do, you know how I am with that.
You're getting better at it.
Yeah, I guess.
How can you improve on perfect?
No. And then the ski hill, we're getting on the closing end of the, we still have some electrical to finish up and just a couple frost freezes we got to put in. We'll be complete with that, some signage. I got the signage ordered. So that's getting wrapped up. We got till March 18th, but I'll have that done within, I'm hoping within the month, get that all closed up.
Great.
So,
So I'll all be fully functional for ski season.
yes,
Good.
hopefully. And then Commissioner Winters and I went on a high rail last week to kind of inspect the rail line, to get a perspective in our eyes. And I was, Commissioner and I both talked about this, we were pleasantly surprised on how good the shape of the railroad actually is. It wasn't near as bad as we thought it was gonna be. So that was pretty positive and exciting for myself. I can't always talk to Commissioner Winters, but it was very, very positive.
We're young now. What's your background to know what the condition is?
Well, we didn't fall off the track.
Did not derail.
Yeah, we didn't derail. So,
Probably elaborate a little bit on that. It's an accepted status and it's in bad shape.
right.
It's not as bad a shape for accepted status in some areas. There's a lot of areas that's been neglected. There's a lot of areas that need help. We was very fortunate to be inspecting on the high rail as it's being inspected as the train is coming behind us. So we got to learn firsthand of how they do that, the walking speed that they go across certain areas. David, my surprise is that we visually could see some places next to crossings that we know are really bad, but we haven't seen places out throughout the whole track. And there's places out throughout the whole track that was in better shape than I anticipated, and I think Dave too. There's ballast issues, there's a lot of tie issues, very severe tie issues. One place that I was nervous, Dave and me, upper side of the rail is here, the other side's 4 inches lower. You figure a car that's 12, 14 foot high, what that does. And that's just one site of where there was a massive derailment by the last operator. So it hadn't been fixed, obviously, by that other operator. But I guess the pleasant surprise is this new operator said, we have these trouble areas. We're going to be evaluating those. The highest priority to be taken care of right away. He had flags across it. He'd already inspected it. That was his 3rd or 4th trip across it. That was the 4th, I guess.
3rd or 4th, yeah, it'd be the
Yeah.
4th of stuff.
I mean, we could visually see he had it ribboned out, plus he re-inspected it. He looked at it again and any new ones. And if I or Dave thought, well, what was that noise? He'd back up and re-look at it and everything. It was quite an experience for me. I was pleasantly surprised at, there's several places that was 5 miles an hour or less with walking speed. But there was a lot of places that could go to 8 or 10 miles an hour. So I guess that's the...
Some of the critical points are the curves, because it was lined out as a narrow track, which has a different curvature requirement than a standard track. But when it was replaced by the standard track, you still had the same curves. But that's what a lot of the previous operators spent their energy on, was beefing up the curves. Did you see that? Or are there still curves out there of concern? That's where all the stress of the train is.
I can speak to that. There's some curves through Connect Oregon that were taken care of, and by R.L. Banks' evaluation of the line. Those curves, they put heavier rail on one side and lighter rail stayed on the other side. That's a concern. You can actually even see where it's starting to wear some of those curves. There was steel ties put in some of those, which doesn't let that flex any. And with that 2 different weights of the rail, it creates over time an issue. Even though the steel ties are good for holding the, is it called tangent or the gauge anyways. So some of the trouble curves have been money put towards that needs tamped, and a lot of them need tamped, and ballast is there. There were several curves that was down to very slow speed to go through, and there are so many throughout there that
that I couldn't tell you how many, but there are several of them, Dave, I think you could elaborate. Two is that was 5 miles an hour or less. But Toby's very energetic, very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. And the people, I met with Hal Gard last week on Tuesday, and Toby and Ben. Hal Gard is ODOT Rail, can't remember, he's way up there. ODOT Rail is a regulatory agency, obviously, but we're willing to work with Toby and Bruce Addington. They already have a meeting set up on the safety side, so very positive. I guess that's the main thing I came away with is the positive. And as a first train in, it was really sort of monumental to me to be able to follow the first, or not follow, but lead the first train in. That was unexpected. We didn't expect that. They turned around the next day and had the loaded ones going out. So.
Good.
And that being said, on a lot of that stuff, when I talked to Toby on time frame and the stuff it takes to repair it, he said it's all simple fixing. Not what I mean by simple fixing, I mean, each spot that he did, or we had to go to walking speed, or he said they're a day job where they could repair them, so it just, there is quite a few of those, but like he said, it's all doable. It's not really it's not that difficult to fix, just time and
money.
Time and money.
And just for the audience on the camera that's watching, when you say Toby, we're contracting with Cornerstone, and then Toby as a subcontract to run it?
Yes.
Well, no, we contract with Goose Lake LLC,
Oh, yeah,
which is
right.
a partnership. The partnership is between Bruce Addington, his son, and Toby Vandervorst. Our contract that we signed with the Board of Commissioners is with Goose Lake LLC.
Right.
Makeup of ownership is.
Cornerstone has nothing to do with it. This is a whole separate.
Yeah.
The other real interesting part of it was, as you know, myself and Dave worked really hard on the bridges to try to find funding on that. As that funding comes forward, but to build we stopped on several bridges and looked at them, and looked at the need on a few of them. And to have somebody there that can talk the part of the bridges and explain that, if we added another stringer here, we can get to the 286, and while we have the whole deck off, we can do that. And a lot of the approaches to the bridges are low, and that was never taken care of.
When you say approaches to the bridges are low, you have settled, so you have an incline, decline?
Well, the maintenance haven't been done to keep it camped up and the ballast brought up, so the bridges are pretty
Stable.
pretty rigid, and so it creates quite a bit of damage. So
And it puts added stress
Yep.
unnecessarily.
Yep. So I and Toby will offer to each one of the commissioners at the appropriate time. He would take any of us on a high rail, and I would recommend either one, both, or all three of us, even at one time if they have the appropriate vehicle. It's good to make that trip. It's long. I mean, we
I
left.
recommend bringing lunch, because there's no restaurants on the road.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
stores.
Yeah.
So that's a
I got
business
pretty hungry.
opportunity.
I shared my jerky with him. I had jerky.
Is there any duck shooting opportunities along?
There's a lot of shooting going on. I don't know when it took place, but at some point, there's a lot of, all the,
We had that discussion.
each mile marker sign had a bullet hole in it, so.
Wow. So,
Seems level. It doesn't seem like people shooting up. It seems like it's level.
Right.
so Dave, did you have anything else?
No,
Okay.
If,
unless there's something.
It's a nice way to have
Did
Brad
you
be
have any
quiet.
department update?
if reduced air pressure in my truck towers, I can do a trip count?
Well, we asked him that actually, and he said you probably could, but he said you'd be buying new tires when you're done. So.
Liaison updates?
We used to
You
do
just
that
sort of-
back on the farm.
You sort of heard, one thing I was definitely going to bring forward was the trip, and that the train is up and operating, that part.
executive board meeting with the Area Committee on Transportation this week in Bly. Derek DeGrew, Klamath County Commissioner, will be going to OTC in October representing the full act, going for them. I will be off that week, not able to attend.
What week?
That's the week of the 16th. We do have the state audit that's going to be happening at mental health. As we all know, it's contracted out to the hospital, to the
Lake Health District.
Lake Health District. But as the governing, I don't know if governing board, the mental health authority, which we are, I don't know if they contact either one of you to interview either one of you. I will be interviewed by the state audit board when they're here. So that'll be coming up in November. I believe it's the 8th or the 9th. So they'll be in town if you have any interest to talk to any of them. They'll be here the 8th and the 9th. I will be meeting with Trace here this week from the Mental Health Wellness Center, I guess you call it. And I'm trying to think what else. That's probably good for my days and updates. I'll think of more.
So did you say you're off the whole week of the 16th?
Yes. Thursday and Friday the week before, which is
Next week?
12th and 13th through the following week.
Okay.
So I will miss the next full work session and board meeting.
Okay. Any other liaison updates?
I have a few, if you got a half hour or so. Probably be good that on the 18th, you won't be here.
No.
So for Denise awareness, I'll be in travel mode to Hood River for that broadband conference on that day, so we might want to cover everything on Tuesday, the 17th. Some things I have, I'll let one of you guys address the dog leg check for the audience to know what Barry Emmer shared with us this morning. Federal Highway Administration is going to do some work out there and it's going to be a closure for I didn't catch the time, but he is coordinating with the local ranchers and things of that nature out there, so they be aware of closure of Dog Lake Road. On Hunter Communication, that's hanging the fiber from Lakeview to Paisley. Originally, they had said that they're going to extend it on to Christmas Valley for redundancy, which has been a big issue for mine for many, many years. So that when we do have outage here with the older line coming in, we have backup. And also be a benefit to North Lake County. However, when Ginger and I, we went over to meet with them for face-to-face to make that person-to-person contact, we've been in contact with telephone. But the question I had for them on the extension from Paisley to North Lake is that no funding have been identified at this time for them, so we're working on different avenues to get some collaborative funding leverage with state and possibly federal. It's important to have that backup redundancy. As you might have read in the paper, Lake Health District and Klamath Community College have renewed their nursing training contract, which is a benefit both to the hospital at this end and also for KCC as far as giving them additional funding. I met with Klamath Lake Community Action Service just to drop in. Donna Bowman will be working to for us to kind of interact more. So I dropped in on a couple of weeks ago, and she had asked that whether I would be interested in sitting on the board of directors. I have not responded back to her on that one yet. On air quality, we have a town hall, a town and county meeting coming up. I don't have that in front of us, but it's basically to mutually agree on the PM advanced plan update with just a few other pieces required by EPA. Has been a part of the Oregon Department of Forestry / DEQ smoke management review. That's been put on hold this summer. I haven't, because of all the fires, so I anticipate that we're going to be meeting again this coming month, this month. On the Safeway, back in early 2000, they wanted to expand their facility here, but there was some issue with ODOT on access or opportunity. Ray Turner has taken that on to see if he can revitalize that initiative to get the Safeway store here expanded.
Well, let me,
You got more history on it.
I have to put it in a little different perspective. That's been the excuse that Safeway never expanded, was access management. Even if that was, some of the accesses were taken away from Safeway, people would have still got there. Safeway used that as an excuse to not expand, blamed it on ODOT and access management. But I guarantee whenever we go out of town, if we go to Home Depot or we go to all those others, there's one access. And so I wish him luck, and I hope Safeway is honest with him and don't blame it on ODOT that the access was the problem.
Well, some of them, it wasn't so much just ODOT, I mean, them blaming ODOT in conversation with the past town managers and things of this nature. There was a disconnect between ODOT and Safeway. So it just needs to be resolved.
Yeah, absolutely. If I would love for Safeway to expand, and if people have to drive in one way to get there, they'll still make it Safeway.
Yeah. At least it has motor door entrance, which is more than some.
Yes, I would love for Safeway to expand.
Yeah. Back on broadband, you know, liaison to telecommunication, I've been working on that for a long time. There's some people say, well, why bother, it's gonna get there someday. That's not acceptable. We had to get it there today for the business and the families and all that, but it does take a long time. Some people say, well, just rely on satellite. Satellite is just internet, it's not really broadband internet. It's satellite, still satellite as far as uploading and other shortfalls within there. We do have a E-rate grant application into USAC back in DC for potential fiber to ADEL plus. It'd be a long shot to get that, but if we were to get it, that would be a big plus for Plush, big plus for Plush. In that they do not have cell phone coverage, and cell phone coverage can be provided via fiber. I've worked many years with Verizon and US Cellular, and I keep getting the same answer. Too costly to provide and too low of a return. So if we can get fiber to Plush, that would help reduce the cost of getting a cell phone. That's a big safety and social value out there. SageCon, after we were successful in not getting enlisted, the SageCon group have been meeting periodically on the state plan and mitigations and things of that nature. Unfortunately, I've been so overloaded with other things that I haven't attended, but it'll be coming up in, later this month. I'll be going to that to re-engage with that scenario. Let's see. Deer season is in effect. I keep plugging in meetings and everything, but kind of coming back on my deer hunting. I haven't had time off in quite a few years. My wife pretty much gave me the marching orders that we're taking advantage of a lot of days this week for deer season. So I'll be in and out periodically. For instance, after this session, I'll be back out in the woods. So that's pretty much what I have at this time. Oh, on the Oregon Broadband Conference in Hood River. This will be my fourth year to attend. Each year I gain more and more information. Actually, I got put on a panel, small community needs and what we achieve and what challenges we have. That's what I've got.
Okay, well, we'll adjourn at 10 after 12 then.